What if everything you've been taught about the Bible was wrong? What if the images you've seen of Moses, Solomon, and David, with their fair skin and European features, are not even close to what they truly looked like? What if the ancient Israelites were not just a distant, faraway people, but were actually people of color, with deep roots in African heritage? For centuries, we've been told a story that might not be the whole truth, and it's time to unearth the buried realities that have been hidden in plain sight. You might be wondering, why is this even important? Why should we care about the true appearance of ancient Israelites? Well, the story you think you know about the Bible, about God's chosen people, is about to change, and this new understanding could reshape everything. You see, what if the people we read about in the Bible, the ones who are meant to represent divine power, wisdom, and grace, actually looked much more like us than we ever imagined? In this video, you will discover why the ancient Israelites may have been people of color, how this truth has been obscured for generations, and how this revelation has the power to change our understanding of biblical history, identity, and race forever. We'll dive into ancient texts, historical findings, and genetic studies to reveal what's been hidden for so long. By the end, you'll understand how a new perspective on the people of the Bible challenges everything we've been taught. And you'll see why the narrative of Black Hebrews and their direct connection to the ancient Israelites is more than just a story. It's the key to healing, reclaiming lost identities, and embracing a shared history that binds us all. Let's uncover the truths that history forgot and shed light on the hidden figures who have long been erased from the story of the Bible. Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Let's discuss and dig deeper together. And if you want to continue this journey of discovery with us, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more content that will challenge the way you view the Bible and history. The origins of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement. In the late 19th century, a new revelation began to stir in the hearts of African Americans living in the post-slavery era. It wasn't a revelation about social justice or political rights, but about something even deeper: identity. These were the beginnings of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, a profound movement that would reshape how people of African descent saw themselves in the context of the Bible. The revelation was simple, yet revolutionary. African Americans, they believed, were the true descendants of the ancient Israelites. Let's take a moment and imagine how these early visionaries must have felt. After centuries of being told that their ancestors were less than human, that their heritage was nothing more than a history of oppression and slavery, here were individuals like William Saunders Crowdy and Frank Cherry, who claimed to have received divine visions. They were ordinary men, not theologians or scholars, who saw through the veil of centuries of lies and discovered a truth that, for many, would change everything. Their message was clear: you are not cursed, you are not lost. You are the chosen people of God, and the Bible speaks to you. For those who embraced this truth, it was more than just a new religious movement. It was a radical reclamation of dignity, identity, and purpose. The very people who had been told for so long that they had no heritage, no culture, and no place in God's grand story suddenly found themselves not only included, but central to the narrative of the Bible. This revelation was not just theological. It was deeply personal and transformative. It gave people a new lens to see themselves and their place in the world, and it also fueled a powerful spiritual awakening. But here's the thing that we must understand: this isn't just about theology. It's about identity. It's about confronting the question that has plagued many descendants of slavery. Where do we fit in God's story? Were we an afterthought, or were we always meant to be part of His divine plan? By looking deeper into the history of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, we begin to understand how this journey back to identity intersects with the biblical texts. It's a movement that challenges everything we thought we knew about race, history, and religion. And while it might be uncomfortable, it also opens up a new understanding of how the ancient Israelites were much more diverse than we ever imagined. This understanding doesn't just shed light on the African American experience, it has the potential to unlock a much larger, more inclusive view of the Bible. It invites everyone, regardless of background, to see themselves in the story of God's people. And here's the real question. If the Bible speaks to us all, regardless of race or ethnicity, then what is the truth we've been missing for centuries? As we dive deeper into the historical, archaeological, and biblical evidence, we'll start to see the connections that challenge our assumptions about who the Israelites truly were. Let's continue our exploration into how the Bible itself might hold the keys to a more inclusive, more diverse narrative than we ever expected. The biblical evidence. What does Scripture say about the appearance of God's people? One of the most profound aspects of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is how it forces us to reconsider the images of biblical figures we have long held in our minds. The Bible itself contains clues about the appearance of God's chosen people that are often ignored in favor of Europeanized depictions. For example, when we think of Moses, Solomon, or David, what do we picture? Often, we imagine white, European figures. But is that what the Bible actually describes? Let's begin with Moses. In Exodus 4:6, we find a striking moment when Moses places his hand into his bosom, and when he takes it out, it is leprous as snow. Now here's the crucial question. If Moses was already white, why would white skin be used as a sign of leprosy? The Bible uses the term snow, a stark contrast to the darker skin that Moses likely had. This event shows that the normal skin tone of Moses would have been much darker, and the leprous condition was an anomaly, a supernatural whitening. This simple passage sheds light on the likely appearance of Moses, and by extension, many other biblical figures. Let's take another example, the Song of Solomon. In chapter 1, verse 5, the bride says, "I am black but comely, O ye daughters of Jerusalem." The Hebrew word shahor literally means black or dark. It's important to understand that this wasn't a moment of shame or degradation, but rather a declaration of beauty and strength. This passage tells us that being black was not only accepted, but celebrated in ancient Israel. And we can't ignore Lamentations 4:8, which describes the nobles of Jerusalem. Their visage is blacker than a coal. The Hebrew word shashak is used here, which clearly describes a dark complexion. Again, we see that the people of Israel were not pale, fair-skinned individuals, as we might imagine based on modern art and media representations. These examples, taken together, challenge us to reconsider the image of the Israelites that we have been handed down through history. It's not just about the color of their skin, it's about embracing the truth of their identity as it's presented in the Bible. These descriptions show us that the ancient Israelites likely had darker skin tones, which aligns more closely with the geographical and cultural context of the ancient Near East and Africa. This realization is more than just a change in how we picture biblical characters. It's a profound shift in how we view the Bible's inclusivity. The Israelites were not a homogeneous, monolithic people. They were diverse, living in a complex world where migration, intermarriage, and cultural exchange were common. And understanding the Israelites as a diverse people helps us see how God's plan for humanity is much broader than we ever imagined. This new understanding forces us to confront our assumptions about race, culture, and faith. If Moses and Solomon were likely people of color, How does that change the way we read the Bible today? It challenges us to see the diversity of God's people in a new light, one that includes people of every race, every color, and every background. And that's a powerful truth that can heal divisions and bring us closer to the universal message of God's love. 4. The historical and archaeological evidence, connecting the dots. If we are to fully understand the connection between the Black Hebrew Israelite movement and the ancient Israelites, we must look beyond just the biblical text. Archaeology plays a critical role in uncovering the physical evidence of historical interactions between the ancient Israelites and African civilizations. One of the most significant findings comes from the discovery of trade routes between the ancient kingdom of Israel and African kingdoms such as Nubia and Egypt. Archaeological digs at sites like Hazor, Megiddo, and Lachish have uncovered African artifacts, showing a deep and sustained interaction between the Israelites and their African neighbors. These weren't just occasional exchanges, they were regular, impactful, and profound. Artifacts, such as pottery, jewelry, and even the remnants of African craftsmen in Israelite cities, suggest that there was a consistent flow of culture, ideas, and people between these civilizations. Take the famous story of the Queen of Sheba's visit to King Solomon in 1 Kings 10, 1-13. The Queen of Sheba, believed to be from the region of modern-day Ethiopia or Yemen, traveled to Jerusalem to test Solomon's wisdom. She brought with her gifts and treasures from her homeland, signaling a strong diplomatic and commercial relationship between the two kingdoms. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was part of a regular pattern of exchange that helped shape the cultural and historical landscape of the ancient world. What's fascinating is that the Bible's depiction of the Queen of Sheba suggests that African nations were not only involved in the story of Israel, they played an integral role in God's divine plan. The Ethiopian eunuch in Acts 8:27-39 is another example. He was a high-ranking official from the kingdom of Ethiopia who was reading the book of Isaiah when he encountered Philip. This moment marks an early example of the gospel reaching across racial and cultural boundaries, confirming the idea that God's plan extends to all nations, including those in Africa. In addition to these historical texts, the archaeological record continues to uncover evidence of African influences in ancient Israel. This evidence helps us piece together a more complete understanding of the diverse, interconnected world of the ancient Near East. And as we continue to explore these discoveries, we see that the ancient Israelites were not isolated in their racial or cultural identity. They were part of a larger, more complex story of human history that included Africa, Asia, and Europe. These findings invite us to rethink the traditional, narrow view of Israelite history. They remind us that the story of the Israelites is not just a story of one people or one race. It's the story of a diverse, interconnected world where God's plan unfolds across boundaries of culture, ethnicity, and geography. And this, perhaps, is one of the greatest lessons the Black Hebrew Israelite movement can teach us. That God's chosen people are not confined to one race or ethnicity. Instead, God's people are all of us, regardless of where we come from or the color of our skin. As we continue to uncover these truths, we begin to see the broader picture of God's kingdom. It's a kingdom where diversity is celebrated, where different cultures and people are united in a shared divine purpose. And that's a message that can heal and unite us all. Genetics and DNA, connecting the dots between ancient Israelites and African ancestry. As we venture further into the world of Black Hebrew Israelites, we must ask, can modern science help validate their claims? Can genetic studies and DNA markers provide us with the evidence to link African Americans, and more specifically, African peoples, to the ancient Israelites? Let's consider the incredible power of genetics. Over the years, Scientists have unlocked the secrets of human ancestry through DNA testing. These tests have uncovered a staggering amount of information about how humanity has spread across the globe. They've also provided us with clues about how ancient Israelites, whose identity has often been shrouded in mystery, might be linked to African nations and populations. The Lemba people of southern Africa, for instance, have long claimed a connection to the ancient Israelites, and genetic studies have begun to substantiate these claims. The Lemba carry a genetic marker called the Cohen modal haplotype, which is associated with Jewish priestly lineages. This genetic evidence suggests that their ancestors may have had ties to ancient Jewish populations, possibly even dating back to the time of the ancient Israelites. But the Lemba are not alone in their claims. Across Africa, communities like the Beta Israel of Ethiopia, who have practiced Jewish customs for centuries, also show strong cultural and religious ties to ancient Israel. Through their practices, such as observing the Sabbath and celebrating Jewish festivals, these communities have kept alive a rich and vibrant connection to the Hebrew faith. Despite the passage of time, their identity and traditions still carry the weight of an ancient history, one that connects them with the broader narrative of the Israelites. Even further afield, communities like the Igbo people of Nigeria also claim Israelite ancestry. The Igbo's traditions, including circumcision and their observance of the Sabbath, mirror those of ancient Israelites. While genetic studies are still ongoing to explore these claims fully, the evidence that certain African communities share not just religious practices but also genetic markers with ancient Israelite populations is compelling. These discoveries challenge us to rethink the narrative we've been told. If DNA evidence connects African populations to ancient Israelites, how can we dismiss these claims as merely a modern invention? What does this tell us about the story of God's people? Is it possible that we've been missing out on the full, rich history of the Israelites simply because we've failed to connect the dots between their biblical story and the people who inhabit the lands of Africa today? This question isn't just about genetics or race, it's about the identity of a people, the continuity of a faith, and the recognition of a divine plan that stretches across time and space. The study of genetics doesn't just offer scientific answers. It provides a deeper understanding of God's enduring covenant with his people, a covenant that transcends borders, continents, and centuries. This is a message of unity, of belonging, of coming home to a faith that has always been inclusive, not exclusive. And this truth can be healing for those who have been cut off from their ancestral roots, for those who have been told they are cursed or lost. These revelations offer the possibility of redemption, a chance to reclaim a lost heritage and connect with the divine in ways that were once unimaginable. As we turn the page on this chapter of our journey, let's reflect on the lessons this understanding brings. It's not just about finding genetic connections, it's about finding our place in God's divine story. And it's about recognizing that from the very beginning, God's plan for his people has always been bigger, more diverse, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. And the legacy of the lost tribes. How history and prophecy converge. The question of the lost tribes of Israel has fascinated historians and theologians for centuries. Where did they go? Who are they? And what does their disappearance mean for the people of God? Some Black Hebrew Israelites argue that the answer lies within the African diaspora, specifically in the communities scattered across Africa as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. One of the most compelling prophecies found in the Bible is in Deuteronomy 28:68, which speaks of the Israelites being carried away in ships to a land of bondage. For centuries, this passage was understood as a description of the Israelites' exile to Babylon or Egypt. However, Black Hebrew Israelites see this prophecy in a radically different light. They argue that it's a direct reference to the transatlantic slave trade, which forcibly transported millions of Africans to the Americas as slaves. The parallels are striking. The Israelites were taken by ships to a distant land, sold as slaves, and subjected to oppression and degradation, just as millions of Africans were. The power of this prophecy is that it connects the Bible's ancient story to a very real, painful chapter in world history. The transatlantic slave trade, with its horrors and injustices, is not a forgotten event. It is part of the fulfillment of a divine prophecy that was written thousands of years ago. The Black Hebrew Israelite movement asserts that African descendants, particularly those from the Americas, are the true heirs of the Israelites who were scattered by God, just as the Bible foretold. But this interpretation isn't without controversy. Critics argue that this view oversimplifies history and ignores the complex realities of the African diaspora. Yet even the critics can't deny the power of the connection. How many times in history has the Bible spoken of a people scattered across the globe, suffering oppression, only to be brought back to their homeland in the end? From the Babylonian exile to the return of the Jews to Israel in the 20th century, the Bible seems to always offer the promise of restoration, of coming home. This is a message that speaks to people across generations and backgrounds. It speaks to those whose ancestors were slaves, those who have experienced oppression, exile, and suffering. It offers a vision of hope, that no matter how lost we may feel, no matter how far from home we may be, there is always a path back. There is always the promise of restoration, redemption, and reunion with the divine. In the Black Hebrew Israelite narrative, the Exodus story is not just a story of ancient Israelites. It's a story for all people who have been oppressed, displaced, and lost. It's a story that transcends time, offering healing and hope for anyone who feels disconnected from their roots, their heritage, or their faith. As we reflect on the ancient prophecy of Deuteronomy, we must ask ourselves, what does it mean to be scattered? What does it mean to be lost? And how does God promise to restore his people? The answer is not only found in the Bible, but in the lives of people who have experienced loss and found healing in the divine narrative of restoration. The story of the Israelites, of their exile and return, is not just ancient history. It is the story of us all. Whether we trace our roots to Africa, Europe, or Asia, we are all part of this larger narrative of exile, suffering, and ultimate redemption. And in embracing this story, we find not just healing for our past, but a vision of hope for our future. God's people are scattered no more. The time has come for us all to find our way back to him, to reclaim our place in his divine story, and to remember that, no matter where we come from, we are all part of the same family, the same covenant, the same promise. The power of identity and faith, how Black Hebrew Israelites see themselves in God's story. One of the most powerful aspects of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is the deep, personal connection its followers have to the biblical narrative. For generations, African Americans and those from African diaspora communities have been told that their history is defined by slavery, oppression, and struggle. But the Black Hebrew Israelite movement offers an alternative view. Their story is also one of divine purpose, of being chosen, of belonging to the same people as those who experienced the miracles of the Bible. Imagine, for a moment, what it would feel like to be told for centuries that your ancestors were less than human, that your heritage was nothing more than a painful history of enslavement. And then, one day, to discover that the Bible itself speaks to you, not as a people who were cursed, but as the chosen people of God. This revelation doesn't just heal hearts, it redefines how an entire people see themselves, their identity, and their place in God's grand plan. It tells them that they have always belonged in the story of the Exodus, in the story of the Promised Land, in the story of redemption. But this understanding is not just about personal healing, it's about reconnecting with a deep, ancient faith. The Black Hebrew Israelites believe that their spiritual inheritance is not just tied to their cultural or ancestral roots, but to their biblical ancestry. They see themselves as the modern-day heirs of the ancient Israelites, the people God chose to carry his name and his message to the nations. This belief transforms how they approach their faith. It gives them the strength to endure, to persevere, and to overcome obstacles, because they understand that their struggles are part of the same divine narrative that brought the Israelites out of Egypt. Take, for example, the way the Exodus story resonates within the Black Hebrew Israelite community. The story of God delivering his people from slavery is not just a historical event, it's a personal story. It's their story. The Israelites, once slaves in Egypt, were freed by God's mighty hand. They were given a covenant, a promise that they would be his people, and he would be their God. For Black Hebrew Israelites, this is not just an ancient story. It's the promise of redemption and freedom for all those who have been enslaved and oppressed. It is a story that speaks directly to their own experience, giving them the hope that just as God delivered the Israelites from bondage, he will deliver them as well. This deep sense of identity also leads to a profound sense of responsibility. Black Hebrew Israelites believe that they are not only the descendants of the ancient Israelites, but that they are also called to continue the work of spreading God's word, of carrying his message of truth and redemption. Their faith is not passive, it is active, and it's driven by the belief that their existence has a divine purpose. Their identity as God's chosen people is not just about receiving blessings, it's about fulfilling their role in God's plan for humanity. The power of this belief cannot be overstated. It is healing for individuals, families, and communities. It provides a sense of worth, dignity, and pride that has been missing for so long. And it's not just about reclaiming an ancient identity, it's about embracing a present and future filled with hope, strength, and purpose. Black Hebrew Israelites believe that they are a vital part of the larger biblical narrative, and that their place in God's plan is not just a matter of ancestry, it's a matter of divine destiny. As we reflect on this powerful sense of identity, we are reminded that faith and identity are deeply intertwined. The Bible speaks of a God who calls his people by name, a God who knows them intimately and personally. This message is one of love, of belonging, and of divine purpose. It tells us that no matter our history, no matter our past struggles, we are all part of God's family, his chosen people. And as we move forward in our exploration of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, it's important to remember that this journey is not just about uncovering history, it's about understanding the power of faith and identity to heal, to restore, and to empower. It's about discovering that no matter who we are or where we come from, we are all part of God's grand story. And in that story, we each have a purpose, a role to play. The divisions within the movement. Understanding extremism and moderation. As we've seen, the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is a diverse and complex community. It's not a single monolithic group, but rather a collection of individuals and communities, each with its own interpretation of what it means to be a descendant of the ancient Israelites. While many Black Hebrew Israelites adhere to a peaceful, scholarly approach to their faith, others have embraced more extreme ideologies that promote division, hate, and discrimination. One of the most troubling aspects of the movement is the rise of extremist factions. These groups, such as the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, have made headlines for their inflammatory rhetoric, including anti-Semitic statements and racial hatred toward non-black people. This has caused significant controversy and led to a negative portrayal of the entire movement in the media. Unfortunately, these radical elements often dominate the conversation, while the more moderate, peaceful groups that focus on spiritual growth and cultural identity remain largely unheard. But it's essential to recognize that these extremists do not represent the majority of Black Hebrew Israelites. The movement is incredibly diverse, and many adherents simply seek to reconnect with their heritage, to reclaim their spiritual identity, and to honor the biblical teachings that they believe are central to their faith. These individuals focus on studying the scriptures, observing the Sabbath, and celebrating the biblical feasts, not as a way of separating themselves from others, but as a way of affirming their connection to God and their shared heritage with the ancient Israelites. The rise of extremist factions within the movement presents a significant challenge, however. It's not enough to simply dismiss these groups as outliers or fringe elements. We must confront the reality that these ideologies are rooted in deep wounds, wounds caused by centuries of oppression, discrimination, and racial injustice. For many in the Black Hebrew Israelite community, the anger and frustration expressed by extremist factions are not just ideological, they are personal, born from a history of being told that their ancestors were cursed, inferior, and without value. It's crucial to understand that these radical beliefs, while harmful and dangerous, are not representative of the movement as a whole. The majority of Black Hebrew Israelites are committed to peace, love, and spiritual growth. They seek to reclaim their cultural and spiritual heritage, not to promote division or hatred. And it's equally important to recognize that the rise of these extremist factions has been fueled, in part, by a lack of understanding and support from the broader society. When a group feels marginalized and unheard, it can be easy for extreme voices to rise to the surface, amplifying messages of anger and division. The challenge, then, is to separate the message of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement from the hate-filled rhetoric of a small minority. It's important to engage with the movement in a thoughtful, respectful way, acknowledging the historical and spiritual roots of the faith, while also rejecting the extremist elements that seek to perpetuate division and hostility. This is where true healing can take place, by creating spaces for open dialogue, mutual respect, and understanding. In the end, the message of the Black Hebrew Israelite movement is a message of healing, of reclaiming lost identities, and of finding purpose in God's divine plan. But for this message to reach its full potential, it must be freed from the shackles of extremism and hatred. It must return to its roots of peace, love, and spiritual growth, just as the Israelites, in their journey through the wilderness, were called to walk in the ways of peace and righteousness. The challenge for all of us, as we engage with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, is to separate the truth from the distortions, the love from the hate, and the light from the darkness. When we do, we'll find that the true message of the Israelites is one of redemption, of reconciliation, and of love for all people, regardless of their race, their background, or their identity. As we continue on this journey of exploration, let us be mindful of the lessons that the Black Hebrew Israelite movement can teach us, that identity, faith, and love are powerful forces for healing and transformation. And in that healing, we find the true power of God's plan for humanity, a plan that is bigger, more inclusive, and more beautiful than we ever imagined. As we draw closer to the end of this journey together, it's important to reflect on everything we've explored. We've uncovered the hidden truths, examined the depths of history, and allowed the wisdom of ancient texts to illuminate new perspectives. But perhaps more importantly, we've touched on something much deeper: the power of identity, faith, and connection. This is a journey that is not just intellectual, but deeply spiritual. The Black Hebrew Israelite movement is not just a theological perspective or a religious identity. It's a profound reclamation of something that was lost for so long, the understanding of who God's people truly are and where they fit in His divine plan. It's the rediscovery of a heritage that many were told they had no right to claim, a return to a story that was never meant to be forgotten. As we explored the ancient roots of the Israelites, we discovered not only their connection to Africa, but also to the universal human experience of struggle, resilience, and ultimate redemption. This is a story that is bigger than any one group of people. It's a story that speaks to the heart of what it means to be human. And as we journeyed through the rich tapestry of biblical texts, historical evidence, and genetic studies, we were reminded of something incredibly important. That identity is not just about where you come from, but who you are in relation to something greater. The ancient Israelites, regardless of their skin color, were not defined by their lineage alone. They were defined by their relationship with God, by the covenant He made with them, and by the divine purpose that flowed from that relationship. In the same way, our own identities are shaped not by the world's standards, but by the divine love that God has for each of us. As we stand in the light of these revelations, we are invited to reflect on the larger narrative of redemption that extends across time, across generations, and across nations. This journey is not just about discovering the lost tribes of Israel, it's about discovering our own place in God's story. It's about understanding that we too are part of a grand design that is bigger than our individual lives, our struggles, or our pain. This message of redemption and belonging isn't just for those who identify with the Black Hebrew Israelite movement. It's for everyone. It's for anyone who has ever felt lost, disconnected, or broken. It's for anyone who has ever wondered where they fit into the story of God's people. The Bible speaks to all of us, regardless of race, background, or circumstance. In the grand narrative of God's creation, we are all woven into the same fabric, called to walk the same path of faith, redemption, and restoration. So, as we close this chapter, I invite you to take a moment and reflect on your own journey. What part of this story resonates with you? What new understanding have you discovered about yourself, your heritage, or your relationship with God? The power of this revelation is that it can transform not just how we see the past, but how we approach the future. The message of God's love and inclusion is one that transcends time, and it is a message that is meant to heal, to restore, and to unite us all. If this video has brought light into your life, if it has helped you see yourself in a new way, or if it has sparked a deeper connection to your spiritual journey, I invite you to support this mission. Every bit of energy you give allows us to continue sharing the transformative power of these stories and to spread the message of hope and healing to more hearts in need. If you found value in this video, please consider supporting us by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Your engagement helps us to continue reaching more people with the message of God's love, His people, and the truth that has the power to set us free. Remember, every contribution, no matter how small, is a precious gift that makes all the difference. Your support is a reminder that we are all part of something much bigger than ourselves, and together we can continue to seek truth, spread love, and build a stronger, more inclusive community of believers. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being part of this journey with us. I am incredibly grateful for your time, your energy, and your willingness to walk alongside us in this exploration of faith, history, and identity. As we continue to seek understanding and embrace the beauty of our shared story, let us remember that we are all children of the Most High, created in His image with a divine purpose that transcends race, ethnicity, and background. So, as we move forward, let us carry this knowledge with us, knowing that we are part of a greater narrative, a narrative of redemption, of healing, and of divine love. And in that love, we find our true identity, our true purpose, and our true place in God's plan.